All right, we'll get started. As people kind of trickle in, I'd like to welcome you all to the webinar Visualizing Broadband Data in Michigan. We're lucky enough to have Dan Manning, who's Community Technology Advisor at Connected Nation Michigan, joining us today. My name is Troy Rosenkrantz. For those that don't know, I am the GIS and Data Manager here in the Office of Economic Development at the University of Michigan-Flint. So first, a couple housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded, so will be available to you on our website afterwards, just a couple days later. It'll be on our Office of Economic Development site, and I'll try to send out another email to you all to let you know that it's available if you want to review. Type your questions or comments in the Q&A box at any time. I'll be monitoring it the entire time. Also, if you have anything just in the chat function as well, we'll try to make sure everything's answered towards the end of the presentation. If you like the slides, Dan's provided them. Just contact me, shoot me an email, and I will send those off to you as well. Just wanted to make you all aware, we have another event coming up in this month in 2 weeks for International GIS Day. We'll have two different sessions. There'll be webinars just similar to this. One's from 11 to 12, and that's understanding how GIS and data can support your business. So there will be a discussion about how what types of data are out there, what types of data should you be looking at, forms of GIS, what are free resources that you could use to help start up your business or expand your business if needed. And then from 2 to 3 p.m. in the afternoon, we'll be having a session with Joe Shapani, who's the director of the Flint Public Art Project, which, if you don't know what that is, there are about 150 murals painted across the city of Flint, and how he's using that and using GIS data to help provide community economic development through placemaking, as well as that project is starting to expand into the city of Grand Blanc. And we'll have Christina Irwin from the city of Grand Blanc to describe how that expansion and how they're planning on using that within their community. To register for that event, registration is free. Just go to go.umflint.edu/GIS day. Just to let you know also, I'll mention it again at the end, you'll be getting an email within the next day or so just to thank you. And as well, there will be a post-webinar survey link within that email, just so we can get ideas for future events like this, how you enjoyed this one, so we can make everything as good as possible for future. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dan Manning. Again, he's Community Technology Advisor with Connected Nation, Michigan. Go ahead, Dan. I'll stop sharing.
Great. Well, thanks, Troy, and good afternoon, everybody. Good to be with you today. Thought I'd take a little time here and kind of take you through a number of different things about what we do with broadband data at Connected Nation Michigan, or Connect Michigan as we're also known. It's kind of our old name, but I'll give you a number of different topics here that I'd just like to take you through if I can get my screen going here. Let's see, hopefully you can all see that. You got it, Troy?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so let me kind of step through a little bit of an agenda that I put together that I thought might be helpful to you, and very flexible with this. If there are specific topics you want to talk about, I'll try to save a little time at the end so we can have some Q&A and other discussion. As Troy said, I'm a community technology advisor for Connected Nation Michigan. Have been doing this for about the last 10 years or so. We've been working with communities and broadband providers across the state for the last several years, and doing a number of different studies, trying to bring communities and broadband providers together to try to address some of the needs that we see across the state and across individual counties, townships, municipalities as well. So this in terms of going forward here for the rest of the hour here, I thought I'd give you a little bit more background on Connected Nation Michigan, who we are, what we do, talk a little bit about what broadband is. There's lots of different thoughts and definitions that are out there. Kind kind of give you some perspective on that. I'll take you through a bit of an example of some of the work that we do as it relates to broadband and gathering broadband data, and then how we in turn use that. Take you through a little bit on some of our coverage maps, if you're familiar with those. Take you through a couple of examples of that as well and what's available to you that might be helpful. This is kind of a peak time for us right now in terms of funding requirements and funding availability. There's never been a time where so much money has been granted or set aside for broadband expansion across the country and across the state. So the real challenge for us now is, and I say us, I'm talking about Connected Nation Michigan, communities, providers, all other organizations. The biggest challenge is trying to figure out what's the best way to spend that money and be most effective with it, and make sure that some of that money doesn't get wasted or used in ways that are not going to be all that helpful. So I'll take you through just a little bit on that, and then I'll give you a quick demonstration of some of our interactive maps and kind of some of the things that we do with it that again can be helpful in our overall mission here. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. As I mentioned, Connected Nation Michigan, we also been called Connect Michigan in our first 5 years or so. We just kind of changed the name because we have a national organization, which is our parent company, called Connected Nation, if you're not familiar with them. They are also a nonprofit, as are we. And our common mission is just to help expand the access, adoption, and use of broadband across the state and across the country. And there's a number of different major functions that we play in that role, one of which is focusing on broadband mapping. I'll talk to you about a little bit more about that mapping process overall, and then what we do here a little bit more locally to help enhance that. As I mentioned, a lot of what I do is centered around community engagement, broadband planning with individual counties. In some cases, we'll do things down to a township or group of townships level to help them get started and what they need to do to help address some of the needs that they're hearing from their residents and businesses. We also have a team that's really focused on research and analysis at Connected Nation, do lots of surveys, looking for trends in technology, lots of outside work in terms of what's going on in the industry, things to help us longer term. As I also mentioned, we have lots of relationships with broadband providers across the state. There's probably, might surprise you, maybe 150 or so companies like Comcast, Charter, AT&T, and all the others that are out there that provide some level of broadband service over across a number of different technologies. We try to maintain relationships with them, and then, like I said, in turn, try to bring those folks to the right communities and work out solutions to problems that each of those communities are facing. We've also been very much involved with some of the state agencies. Over the past several years, we've worked with the Public Service Commission, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, who are currently most involved with Department of Education, Department of Labor, a number of different organizations, and helping kind of funnel all of the broadband requirements across the state so that we don't duplicate efforts and provide a common area of focus for broadband for the state. We also just work on digital inclusion, doing things to help reduce the cost of broadband for residents, making sure that people know where to go in order to get access to equipment and broadband service, obviously, laptops, and so on and so forth. So lots of different facets of the work that we do here at Connected Nation Michigan. Most recently, the current mission that we're on, if you will, is working with MEDC, and they've asked us to do a number of different things over the last couple of years to really help improve the focus on broadband and do some specific things to help get a strategy in place. One of which is just to serve as the state's primary point of contact for broadband. So we've been playing that role actually for the last 5 or 10 years, but now more officially for the state. We're kind of the go-to place for broadband data, maps, and other information related to providers and technology. We also facilitate a state level task force that meets on a regular basis, about a monthly basis, I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a second to coordinate some of these efforts across those different organizations. We provide ongoing assistance to communities, as I mentioned, to help them with understanding the technology, who their providers are, what's involved in broadband planning, how to get started with that, how to solve some of these problems, and so on. And then also we've got a kind of a proven methodology that we use with a number of counties called our Connected program that we use to step through some requirements gathering, getting grassroots level data from residents and businesses within a county, find out what their current environment looks like, how they're connected to broadband, who their providers are, whether they're satisfied with what they've got or not, and what their ongoing needs are going to be. And then we translate that into action plans to help launch these communities onto a plan to hopefully make some progress going forward. So that's really the role that we play. This Connecting Michigan Task Force, or CMIT we call it, is, as I mentioned earlier, this conglomeration of all of these different state agencies that we facilitate on a monthly basis, get them together to discuss a strategy for the state, but more importantly, make sure that they're not stepping on each other in terms of what they're doing with broadband to help their individual organizations and their members. So it's providing that common level of focus for all of them. And then you may be aware that just this past summer, Governor Whitmer announced the formation of this Michigan High-Speed Internet Office, going to be known as MyHigh, I guess. That is probably going to go into actual operation after the first of the year, but the intent of that is to provide another focused state agency that's really focused specifically on broadband, that's part of the state government function. So it'll give them the capability to procure funds, provide a grant program that we've already been exercising here a bit, and also has some authority to drive strategy and make some significant actions happen, as well as working with the federal government on some other overall programs. So you'll be hearing more about the High-Speed Internet Office here over the next couple of months as it starts to take shape. The state has asked us, Connect Michigan, to get more involved in helping structure that office so we know what it looks like, how it needs to be staffed, what kind of a strategy or set of objectives that they have, and so on. So that's what we're spending a lot of our time on right now, is getting organized for that effort. One of the other things that MEDC has asked us to look at is identify those key areas across the state that are most unserved or underserved, if you will, from broadband. Those areas where there's not enough infrastructure to support the population. A lot of these, as you can see here, are mostly in the more rural areas where there's just not enough, again, not enough infrastructure there to support the needs and the demands. So over the last year and a half, we've been putting some additional effort into these 8 subregions, if you will, across the state that have been recognized as having the most unserved census blocks, which is really the way we kind of look at it. Those areas that really need the most help, and helping them put together some action plans, figure out how to procure some funds, apply for grants, work with their local providers, and so on. So this has been a big part of our effort here locally, especially mine. On the last 6 to 8 months, I've been working mostly in the Thumb area there, where the greatest need has been. And I'm happy to know that we've got some big things happening here over the next couple of years that'll bring a lot of better broadband service, especially in the Thumb area and in these other subregions that you see here on the map. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about broadband and what it is, or maybe a little bit about what it isn't. People have different understandings of what it really means, but it's really a technology to help transport internet service or access to the internet, if you will, through a number of different technology types. And you can see there's 6 primary vehicles or technology types for the most part that are available now. And this may change over time as well, but we tend to focus more on what we call the fixed connections, where you're more stationary in your homes or in your businesses, and have doesn't necessarily have to be wired, but high speed, stable access, if you will, to internet service. And those 4 technologies are, as you see on the lower left, they're cable service, obviously through the TV cable companies like Comcast, Charter, and WOW, and a few other local companies like that. There's also a fiber to the home service, which is really the ultimate technology that we're really trying to drive towards. Certainly has been pretty expensive in order to make that happen up till now. But as time has gone on, the price of fiber continues to come down. Labor is still pretty expensive in order to make that happen, but for the most part, the ideal connectivity tool or vehicle is really fiber going forward. We'll see a lot more focus on that and getting fiber directly into people's homes. DSL is internet over the old phone lines through copper, through AT&T and Frontier and TDS and a number of other companies like that, generally the old phone companies, and their ability to deliver internet service over those old phone lines. A lot of that's being limited by speed. Most of those can get up to maybe 25 megabits per second, kind of tops, and not much higher than that. And certainly as time goes on, we're seeing more demand for higher speed and higher bandwidth. So there may not be a long-term future for DSL connectivity. And then the last one that we also focus on is fixed wireless. This is transmitting internet service from towers and other high structures down to receivers in people's homes and businesses. So these are companies like Air Advantage and Agra Valley and a number of other connectivity systems like that. And they have some limitations as well, but they're also very good in going into smaller areas, more remote areas where they can put up a tower and tie back to the internet through fiber and then transmit from those towers to more rural areas where the population is not quite as dense. So that's really where a lot of our focus is and will be going forward. Beyond that, there's also mobile broadband, obviously through your smartphone, getting access to the internet that way. Certainly some limitations with that, but a lot of people are really using mobile broadband as their primary way of getting online. But you can't do everything that way. Satellite is another option, generally regarded as a kind of a last option for more rural areas. If you can't get access to anything else, satellite is available through companies like HughesNet or Viasat, and maybe a couple of others. As long as you can get a line of sight up into the skies from your home, you get access to that service, but there are limitations on price. Number one, it can be pretty expensive. Delay times or latency and the signals going back and forth, limitations on data caps and so on. So pretty restrictive with satellite generally going forward, but there are some progress being made with satellite. You may be aware of Elon Musk's efforts with Starlink, which is a low orbit satellite system he's putting up with a number of different satellites that are kind of blanketing the country and eventually blanketing the world is really his goal. Some of that's being rolled out now across different parts of the country. There's some of that available in the state of Michigan. And it's been fairly successful in their beta mode right now, with people getting upwards from 100 to maybe 200 megabits per second service, again, depending where you're at and which satellite you're tied to and so on. They're still in kind of a beta mode, so they're rolling this out gradually. We'll probably hear a little bit more about that here in the coming months. But their general message right now is that we ought to be looking for more widespread access to Starlink sometime into next year. So that's going to be a good fit for some folks, especially, again, out in the more rural areas where they've got access to at least a clear access to the skies. Again, you still have that limitation. Okay, tell you a little bit about how we approach broadband planning with communities. If you're interested in some of this, what we're really trying to do is get a better understanding of broadband availability and where there's access and where there's not, based on the most reliable data. You may be aware that the FCC publishes maps on about an annual basis that shows where the broadband coverage is at various speeds across the country. We do some work beyond that to take that data and go back to the individual broadband providers that supply that data to the FCC and try to get more granular data, help us make that more reliable and more dependable data that we have more confidence in. So we do that at a community level as well when we form these community teams and do planning projects in individual counties. We then help them understand specific areas within their counties where there's a need for better or new service if the service doesn't exist today. And based on the result of that and our findings, we then help them develop an action plan going forward to, again, focus on those key areas that need the help, figure out which broadband providers to work with, figure out where the funding is going to come from in order to make that happen, and kind of work together in partnerships between the counties, the townships, and the providers to come up with a plan in order to solve some of these issues that are out there. And by going through this process, then the whole idea is to have counties most aware of where their needs are and what specific areas of the county need some help and how they would approach those problems and how to solve them so that they're ready to take advantage of any funding opportunities when they come along. The one thing that we've learned over the years is that sometimes these different federal organizations will announce these broadband grant programs and they give you like 60 to 90 days to apply and get approved. And it happens really fast. And oftentimes our communities aren't ready to put together a plan like that and be able to effectively apply and get awarded some of these grants. So a lot of our focus is getting them ready for that and help them identify projects on the early end so that when those funding opportunities come along, they can take an advantage of them. And then overall, we're just trying to get counties a little bit more aware of the broadband issues and get them thinking more about how to plan for broadband and have a process in place to continually work on that, have somebody identified to really provide that focus across the county. So generally what we do when we come into a county, and frankly, we did one of these in Genesee County probably 6-7 years ago. So it's been quite a while now since the last time we went through this, but we'll come in and form a team of stakeholders within the county that really are most affected and most interested in improving the broadband environment there. So we'll have folks from economic development organizations, local government, schools, libraries, private businesses, healthcare organizations, anybody that's, again, really has a stake in broadband, bring them together on this team. And then we'll do this broadband assessment where we will go in and look at who all the local providers are, where their coverage is, more importantly, where their coverage is not, so we can identify where those gaps areas are. And then understand by going out to individual residents and businesses, survey all of those folks, or as many as we can get to participate so that we have some more granular data to help us get a real accurate picture of what the current environment looks like. And then coming out of that, we'll analyze those survey results, combine it with our coverage maps, and then work with local providers in order to identify these projects, like I mentioned earlier, so that we can start executing these projects and fixing some of these problems. So to gather some of this grassroots level data, we offer a number of different surveys. Most of it's really centered around this residential survey that we ask all the households to fill out. We also have specific surveys for these different sector organizations, as you can see here, individual businesses, the farmers through their agricultural survey, local government offices, have them take their own survey. And we do this because they all have individual requirements and needs for the use of broadband and internet access. So there are some specific questions in each of these surveys that are tailored to each of those sectors there, so we can get a better handle on what their needs are. So all of these surveys are made available in a couple different ways. We've built a portal that we can use for each individual county. So it's an online portal, so people can come online and take the survey, assuming that they can get access to broadband in order to take the survey. But it is mobile friendly, so even if they have to take the survey through their smartphone, they can do that. This is exactly what they would see on the portal. This is an example from Midland County, but you can see all 9 of those surveys are available there. And if I'm a representative of a business, say I'm a small business owner, but I also live in Midland County, I would go in and take the household survey, first of all, in order to respond to those questions about broadband access at my home. And then I would also click on the respective survey for my particular business. So if I'm just a general business of some type, I would take the business survey. If I'm in the K-12 school organization, if I'm a principal at a school, I could take the K-12 survey, and so on. You can see the other organizations represented there. So, and then we do a number of things to help drive these surveys in terms of communicating out to folks, work with the local governments, economic development organizations, chambers of commerce to get the word out through advertising, social media campaigns, through the local media with articles. We've done some TV spots and radio spots to raise the awareness of the surveys, to encourage folks to take that so that we can get as much data as we can at the ground roots level to understand what the current environment looks like. And then once we gather all this data, as I said, we'll merge the survey data with the maps that we already have, as well as other data that we've collected about each individual county, and then do an analysis of what the overall infrastructure looks like across the county, how it affects individual households in terms of, you know, what's the adoption rate or the subscription rate, what % of households are connected to broadband today, which ones are not. If they're not connected, what's the issue? Is it a question of price? It's too expensive for them to pay for that monthly service. Are they uncomfortable with the technology? You know, what are the other factors that are getting in the way, preventing people from being online and kind of falling behind, frankly, if they're not being able to connect and interact like they need to online these days. We also do some work on teleworking. How many people are working from home? Certainly that has ballooned over the last couple of years because of everything we've seen from the COVID vaccine or the COVID crisis that we've had. So we'll do some analysis on that. And certainly we're seeing a lot more people working from home. So therefore the demand is much higher than it's been, as well as the kids working from home as well when they can't get into their schools. And then we'll do some further analysis on each of the survey types and feed that back to each of the individual sectors within the county. So this assessment is a great way to gather all that data, kind of give each county a baseline of where they're at, what their needs are, who they can work with in order to solve some of these issues and so on. So as I mentioned, we go through, we'll do an analysis, we'll present the findings of this to the local team that we formed within the county. And then we'll continue to work on that action plan that we build with that team in order to go forward. And we continue to provide support to those counties that we've gone through this process with on a regular basis. So a lot about that. The final output of all of this work is an analysis of what those key findings are. We give them a more detailed presentation to show how their particular county compares to the average of all the other counties that we've gone through this process with. And there's probably been 140 counties over this country that we've gone through this with. We will build an interactive map for that particular county, which will give them the ability to go see the results of survey questions. It'll show where the broadband coverage currently exists today through that interactive map. It'll show, you know, some of the key community anchor institutions across the county and how they're affected by all this and so on. But each county will have their own specific interactive map that they can use and maybe add to if they want to going forward in order to help build this action plan. Okay, so that's kind of the general process that we go through with the communities that we work with. I do want to show you a couple examples here of some of the maps that are available now and that we use on a regular basis. As I mentioned earlier, these maps are created based on data that individual broadband providers send to the FCC on a semi-annual basis. And then we in turn go back and do some updates and some additional corrections to that based on more granular data that we get from those same providers that are here within the state of Michigan. So I guess the good news is we've just published a new version of our maps. All of these are available out on our Connect Michigan website, which is out at connectmi.org. And I'll leave that with you here at the end of the presentation as well. But you can get access to all of these maps at a county level and at a state level, as well as access to a state level interactive map as well. So the maps have been updated just since October of this year. So they're kind of fresh off the press. Important to know that the coverage is reported at a census block level. So when Comcast, AT&T, Point Broadband, Frontier, all of these other companies, when they report their data, if they have a household within a census block, then they count that whole census block as being served, if you will. So that's one of the glaring problems that we have right now, is that we don't have anything more granular than a census block, because clearly there are a lot of people within that census block that may not be able to get Comcast service, for example. And therefore they kind of get underreported as being underserved. There is a process in place and some work going on at the federal level to fix that and come up with a new address level process to start gathering that data, but it'll probably be another couple of years before we see the results of that. So anyway, all this data gets gathered. We generate some maps that show where there's broadband coverage, at least at the census block level. It shows where the service is available. It doesn't necessarily show where people are actually subscribing to the service. So it's just where the infrastructure is. People have various reasons for whether or not they're going to actually subscribe or not. So we don't get into that part of it on the maps. But then these maps get published. So here's an example here. Again, this is Midland County. I just picked Midland as an example because we just recently completed a study with Midland. This same level of map is out there for Genesee County as well. But this particular map shows where there's broadband coverage at a minimum of 25 meg download speed, 3 megabits upload speed. And that's really reflected by all the green areas that you see on the map. So, and I know there's two different shades of green on the map here for Midland County, as there are for all the maps. So the dark green areas, let me start with the light green. The light green areas are those areas that the FCC is reporting based on their input from the providers that shows where there's 25 meg service. And this could be through cable, could be through DSL, fiber, or fixed wireless service. So again, the light green areas show where that service is available through any number of providers or any of those technologies. The dark green areas are where we Connect Michigan have gone in and validated that that service actually exists there. So we're much more confident that the service is actually there. We have a higher confidence level to that. Doesn't mean that the light green areas are wrong. It just means that we haven't validated that all that service is actually there. Some of that validation will take place through the surveys that we collect. Some of it will put some people on the ground to go out and check for it through different signal tests and so on to help validate that. But as you can see in this case for Midland County, they're generally pretty well covered by at least 25 megabits service, which is the FCC minimum right now that we're trying to get everybody to give them that access. Certainly with the demands increasing all the time, we expect that level of speed is going to need to be raised. And most of the providers are on board with that, and they're aggressively going in and increasing speeds wherever they can, as long as their technology will support that. I didn't put it here, but if you go out and go to our website and look at the Genesee County map, for example, you'll see that most of Genesee County is pretty well covered with green as well, because there's generally pretty good service there. But there are lots of pockets that are certainly in need of service, and we want to help focus on all of those and make sure everybody has access to it. This is the same map of Midland County here that shows access to 100 meg service. 100 meg service can really only be delivered, frankly, through either cable or fiber service today. Most fixed wireless, certainly not DSL, is able to provide that speed. So what you're seeing here is generally where Comcast or Charter, or in some cases, WOW Cable has got service across Midland County. And as you can see, there's still lots of white areas out there, that generally more rural areas, that certainly can't get access to 100 meg, and in some cases can't even get access to 25 meg yet. Okay, so the question, it raises a question about why it's important to really have our arms around these maps and making the maps as accurate as possible, and why we spend a fair amount of time going through that and republishing the FCC maps to get them more accurate. And most importantly, we just want to know where, in fact, people are not able to get access to the speeds that they need. That's the primary area, or primary reason for that, and identify which areas are considered unserved, meaning they can't get access to 25 meg, or underserved, which is maybe they can get access to 10, but that's not going to be enough for them longer term. So we need to identify those underserved areas as well. But the biggest factor that comes out of all of this is that this is what the federal government uses. These maps is what they use in order to identify where they're going to apply funding, or at least make funding available to areas that want to make some improvements within their individual counties. So like I was saying earlier about the census block issues, if there are areas out there that are coded in green, and there's people living in those areas that can't get access to 25 meg or higher, they're going to get overlooked because the maps say that they're already being served by some broadband provider. So that becomes a huge problem and a big issue for those people that are living in those areas, which is why we spend so much time trying to get these things accurate. And it will be better with the new federal process when that gets done here in the next couple of years. But as I said, it'll be a while. So if we don't have accurate maps, it just leads to maybe a waste of money, or the money not going in the right places. It can mess up business cases that some of the broadband providers are trying to put together to figure out where they can go and build out and still make a dime while they're doing this at the same time. So that's kind of a little bit more detail on our maps. Again, they're all available out on our website at connectmi.org if you want to go look at any of those. I did want to just mention to you, again, there are some specific programs that are out there that people are taking advantage of. Mostly broadband providers are applying for these grants, but you can see the number of dollars that are out there. $20 billion through this Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. This is mostly for fiber build out over the next 5 to 10 years. That is already starting to take place, and we're seeing some of that. Some of that's going to the thumb area of Michigan that I mentioned earlier. They're getting a portion of that money because of the need out there, and other parts across the state are seeing some of that as well. The USDA has got another $1 billion that they're offering out for this kind of work. This Connecting Michigan Communities grant programs, a state level grant program for broadband that we put in place a couple years ago for smaller size projects. And then we're finding a lot of these counties are using their American Rescue Plan dollars for broadband related projects as well, which is a valid use of that. So again, never been so much money made available. We just need to make sure that it gets funded in the right way. So with that, I'll leave you, and I'll be sending out these charts. Well, I already sent them to Troy, but he'll make them available if you want them. Here's some websites as to where to go to get access to our maps. There's also a statewide interactive map that I'll show you here in just a second. And then our main website as well to get more information about us and the kind of work that we're doing with communities across the state. But what I'd like to do now is see if I can flip you over here. I'm going to switch to a different screen and see if I can get us to an interactive map that'll show a little bit more information here. If I can find it. Bear with me a second here. There we go. I'm going to share this. Okay. Okay, this is our off of our Connect Michigan website. Can you see that? You see the change? Okay, Troy, do you got that?
Yep.
Okay. I want to make sure I still have people with me here, but from our main web page, there's a set of coverage maps. This will take us to, and then from here, we've got a number of different maps that I had mentioned to you. There are state level maps that'll show a variety of different coverage at various speeds. So there's a state level map that'll show 10 meg service, 25 meg service, 100 meg service, and even gigabit level service, and where that's available across the state. There is also county level maps that have those same speed tiers. So if we wanted to look at, let's say, Genesee County, since that's where we're talking from here, and you can see the 4 maps that are available here. There's also a maximum speed map and where there's been recent growth and expansion. So if we look at the 100 meg map for Genesee County, for example, it'll bring this up and you can see what Genesee County looks like in the green areas where there's currently broadband service and where there's not. Shrink that down a little bit so that you can see, but basically, again, all these maps are available in a PDF format so that you can download those and use those as you might need to do that. Let's see if I can get out of this. Back. If I can here. I go back. This. Screen. Go back. Close this up. Bear with me. Whoop. Sorry about that. Hit the wrong button. Sorry, I closed the window.
No problem.
I'm getting there. Bear with me. Too many windows open. Okay, let's try this again. I know we're about 45 minutes in here, so I want to make sure I leave some time here for us to. Let me take you to my screen. Maps. Okay. One second here. Let's try this one more time here. Here we go. Okay, sorry. All right, let me take you into our interactive map. I'll show you just a couple of things and the stuff that's available there. So here, if we wanted to, this is what our interactive map looks like. If we wanted to, let's zoom in on, say, Genesee County, for example. We can do a zoom there. We'll take us to a expanded version of the county. Back up from there a little bit. I'm going to go turn on the layer for the county boundaries. And you can see us there. And then we've got a number of different layers here that you may be familiar with. So if we were, for example, if we wanted to look at where the cable service is across Genesee County, you can see that here in the pink area. So that's again, as I mentioned earlier, most of Genesee County is covered by one of the cable providers, Charter or Comcast for the most part. If we flip that off, we can go to the DSL service. This would be Uverse, Frontier, other companies like that that have got service available through their phone lines, typically maxing out at about 25 meg. Do the same thing for fiber to the home service. Not a lot of that available, but you can see a little bit on the brown areas there where some of that's coming on board. We'll see a lot more of that. You can see some of that up into Saginaw County and over in Shiawassee as well. So more and more fiber is coming. And then you can see the fixed wireless coverage as well in the green and where that service is available. You can also look at it by speed. So if we wanted to see where there's 25 meg service, regardless of technology type across the county, you can see that layer is there as well. And then there's a number of other layers and things that you can look at, number of providers that are available at a given point in time. Also have the capability here of just putting in an address or a location. So if I just said Flushing, Michigan, for example, I can select that or a specific address, and it'll then come back and give me a list of the broadband providers that currently serve Flushing, for example. So you can see there's AT&T DSL service, so that'd be their Uverse for the most part, AT&T Mobile, HughesNet, obviously satellite service, Invisalink, another fixed wireless provider. The phone companies are listed here as well through smartphones, through Verizon, T-Mobile, Xfinity Cable is available. So it's a great way for people that are trying to figure out who their providers are. They can just come to this interactive map, put in their address, and we'll give them a list like this to show them what's available, or at least the providers that are saying they should be able to serve them and give them some choices or some options to try. So a lot of things that are available on this interactive map. I'm not going to go through all of that, but I did want to leave you with at least letting you know that that's available if you have interest in that. With that, I'm going to stop this and get out of the map. And I guess I would just kind of open it up for questions at this point and see if there's anything in particular you'd like to chat about. I see there's a couple of things in the chat room. I can take a look at that, and we can go from there.
Thank you, Dan. That was a wonderful presentation for us. The one question we had early on was about Starlink and if that reaches the broadband category. And then you pretty much answered that right after it was asked. So that's the only question we had during the presentation. Is there anybody else that might have a question for Dan before we wrap it up?
Yeah, and maybe while we're waiting on that too, just another comment on Starlink. I guess it is considered still broadband. A lot of it is centered around the speed, and the speed seems to be there with Starlink. So that's one of the major factors there. But and again, we tend to focus a lot more on those fixed and stationary connections through either fiber or cable, DSL, or fixed wireless for the most part. But certainly Starlink is a very valid and viable way of getting that kind of connectivity, especially in rural areas like the UP. But there's a lot of good fiber coming to the UP over the next few years too. So be aware of that there in northern Michigan.
Another question, are there currently incentives to promote competition or increase speeds in an already served area?
There are some incentives out there and grants available for increasing speed if you're at 25 meg or lower. So if you're able to get 10 meg, for example, that's considered to be underserved. So most of those grants are available for underserved areas. One of the key issues is and it goes back to the maps a bit too, is those maps show where there's 25 megabits service available. That's really an advertised speed. So that's another reason that we go out and do all these surveys. So Comcast or Charter may be telling you that they're offering you a 25 meg or a 30 meg package, but you might be only getting 10 meg in your home. So that becomes a kind of an issue there, which is one of the reasons we do those surveys, to help us identify those areas that they're saying they're covered, but they're really not. Unfortunately, the grants haven't caught up to a lot of that stuff yet. And each provider would have to make their case to say, I know Comcast is covering this particular census block, but we know the residents are telling us they're not. Therefore, I'd like to justify my business case that said, I'd like to come into that area, build some new service that can actually deliver 25 or 30 meg. So that gets a little bit messy trying to make that work, but there are grants available now. If you're getting less than 25 meg advertised speed, those grants are available and people can apply for them.
One quick question, is the data available to download in some sort of geospatial file, or is it just on the web maps?
Yeah, there is a state level shape file that's available from our maps. If you go there and click on one of the menus up in the upper right hand corner of our map page, I think it's there for other data. If you click on that, there's a couple of data files that are available that you can download that at least give you a statewide view through a shape file that you can then integrate into your own systems if you want to do that.
One person wants to, if you're able to, talk briefly about the projects that are currently going on the thumb and any of the RDOF winners.
Oh yeah, yeah, we're pretty excited about this actually. We've done our requirement study in Lapeer, Huron, Sanilac, Tuscola, and St. Clair counties, those 5 counties over the last year and a half. And in exchange for that, it helped us identify those areas that, again, that are greatly in need. There is some fiber out there through a couple of companies like Air Advantage and Agri Valley. Not a lot of fiber to the home, but a lot of fiber to the business. However, with this RDOF program that's been made available, this was really awarded to a number of different providers who they went through like an auction process where the providers would bid on how much money they would need or they would be willing to ante up in order to bring fiber service to different areas of the thumb. And then whoever had the best business case for making that happen actually got the award so that they could go ahead and make that happen. So having said all of that, there's a couple of things happening in the thumb. Number one, Thumb Electric recently announced that they're now getting into the fiber business. So they are building out fiber to the home to all of their electric customers, which are primarily in Huron, Tuscola, and Sanilac counties. So that project is now underway, and over the next probably 3 to 4 years, we should see all of that come to fruition. Thumb Electric also participated in this RDOF program, and so they're getting some money to help them with that and help them expand and make all that happen. In addition to Thumb Electric, a company called Mercury Broadband, which is based out of Kansas City, that is now coming in, and they've made a number of commitments across the state of Michigan, and a lot of it in the thumb area as well. So they're going to be doing a lot of build out across the thumb in other parts of Michigan, taking some of these RDOF dollars as well. That's all going to happen. It has to be done within the next 5 years. A third company is AEG, which is based out of Atlanta. They are kind of a construction company for fiber. They're building out fiber, about to start now in the thumb area. They're doing some work up in the UP right now. And they're going to be delivering that fiber service through a last mile company called Highline. You may start seeing some notice about them being formed and offering broadband service, fiber service up in the UP, and it'll soon be coming to the thumb. So Highline will be offering that service for a lot of the other areas of the thumb. So between AEG, Highline, and Thumb Electric and Mercury Broadband, and a little bit of CenturyLink as well. Those 4 companies are going to be blanketing most of the thumb area with fiber here over the next 5 to 6 years. So that's a lot of good news there. And a lot of things like that are happening in other parts of the state too.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then one last one that we had was, do the surveys that are done include any sort of speed tests?
Yeah, we
As
do
part
make
of
that
that.
speed test available to them. We do ask them if they know what kind of speeds they're already getting. If not, we provide them a link right within embedded in the survey that they can click on to do the actual test right there while they're online taking the survey. So that option is there. We do make these surveys available in hard copy too, and provide the link if people can. If they're taking a hard copy survey and filling it out by hand, they still have the link if they can get online somewhere and take the speed test. If they wanted to do that from whatever location they're working. And some people want to know what kind of speeds they're getting at work, for example, so that option is there. You have to be a little careful with the speed test, though. I mean, it'll show you what you're actually seeing at your laptop or at your computer. But there's lots of other factors that are affecting that speed, right? It could be your modem, your router, connectivity coming into your home, as well as the speed being provided by the provider. So you have to be a little careful about not putting too much stock into that, but it is a helpful tool to help us with that.
Awesome. And then there was one last comment just saying that this type of information is going to be great to use and incorporate into other studies, like for vulnerable or underserved populations, looking at income and food insecurities, et cetera. And that's something that, here at the university that we're going to be looking into the future as well, as we look across with some of our funding that's been done towards this type of work. We're incorporating broadband infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, healthcare infrastructure, and bringing all those together to kind of understand where the most underserved populations actually are.
So that's a great point. And I don't know if this audience is interested in this, but I'll just make one final point, is that there is now also a federal program to provide a subsidy to low-income families to help pay for their broadband service. So if there are low-income families, within your areas there that are struggling to get online because they can't afford it, there's this emergency broadband benefit program, it's called, where low-income families can apply and get a $50 a month subsidy toward the cost of their monthly internet service. It also provides a $100 subsidy towards the purchase of a new device. So if they need to go out and buy a new tablet or a laptop, they can get $100 credit toward that. So that's just another way of helping getting people connected. So you may want to work that into your plans as well.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Dan. My contact information is there. So again, if you want the slides, feel free to just email me and I'll get those to you. There's Dan's contact information as well. Reminder, there will be a post-event survey link that'll come in the email you should be getting within the next day. I also put it in the chat. So if you just take a few minutes to fill that out, we'd greatly appreciate it. And then again, for the GIS Day registration coming on November 17th, that's a Wednesday, go.umflint.edu/GIS Day. Thank you very much for attending, and thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much. Good to talk to you all. Take care now.